There are some secrets that are kept out of love. They are wrapped in good intentions, tied with the ribbon of protection. My mother held such a secret. For my entire life, she carried it quietly, a hidden weight on her heart. She believed she was shielding me from a pain too sharp for a child to bear. She thought that by hiding the truth, she was giving me a better, lighter life. I never knew. I never suspected. I saw her as my rock, my one constant in a world that often felt uncertain. She was my whole family. It was always just the two of us. I would look at her sometimes and see a shadow in her eyes, a sadness she could never quite explain. When I asked about it, she would just smile, a little sadly, and say, "It's nothing, my love, just old memories." I accepted that. Why wouldn't I? I trusted her completely. The secret stayed hidden for 28 years. It lived in the silence between us, in the questions I never thought to ask, in the pages of a life I never knew existed. Then, on an ordinary Thursday, it finally found its way out. It didn't come from her. It came in the form of a message from a stranger, a name I had never heard before. That message was like a single crack in a great, solid dam. And once it started, everything came flooding out. The truth she had guarded so fiercely, the story she had tried to bury, it all rushed forward. It was meant to protect me, but when it finally surfaced, it didn't feel like protection. It felt like a betrayal. It shattered the foundation of everything I thought I knew about myself, about her, about our life together. She tried to protect me, but her secret destroyed us. To understand how a secret can have so much power, you have to understand our world before it arrived. My mother, Grace, was my sun and my moon. She worked as a seamstress, her hands always busy, always creating something beautiful from scraps of fabric. We lived in a small apartment that always smelled of thread and fresh ironing. It was cozy. It was safe. She made it that way. She would work late into the night, the hum of her sewing machine a familiar lullaby from my childhood. I would fall asleep to that sound, knowing she was just in the next room. I never knew my father. The story was simple, and I never had a reason to doubt it. My mother told me he was a good man, a kind man, but that he had died in a car accident just a few months before I was born. She said he never even got to know she was pregnant. "He would have loved you so much," she would tell me, her voice soft. "You have his smile." That was all I had of him, a smile I supposedly shared with a ghost. There were no pictures. She said they were lost in the move after he passed. It made sense to me. It was a sad story, but it was our story. My mother never dated. She never even seemed to look at another man. Her entire life was her work and me. I admired her for that, for her strength. But as I got older, I also felt a little sorry for her. It seemed like such a lonely life. I would tell her, "Mom, you should go out more, meet people." She would just shake her head and smile. "I have everything I need right here, Maya." She would say my name with such finality, like I was the beginning and the end of her world. We didn't have much family. There was an aunt, my mother's sister, who lived far away. We saw her once a year at Christmas. She was nice, but distant. She and my mother didn't seem very close. They would talk about the weather, about my school, but never about the past. The past seemed to be a country they had both left and had no wish to visit again. I was a quiet child. I loved to read, to draw. I didn't have many friends. My mother was my best friend. We would have movie nights on our old sofa, sharing a blanket and a bowl of popcorn. We would talk for hours about everything and nothing. I told her all my dreams, my fears, my silly crushes. She listened to everything. She made me feel like the most important person in the world. When I was a teenager, I went through a phase where I was obsessed with finding out more about my father. It felt like a missing piece of me. I asked my mother for more details. What was his favorite color? What kind of music did he like? Did he have any brothers or sisters? She would always give me vague answers. Oh, he liked blue, I think. Or, he listened to a bit of everything. When I asked about his family, she would grow quiet. They weren't really in the picture, Maya. It's a sad story. Let's not dwell on it. Her voice would have a note of finality that I learned not to challenge. I thought her reluctance to talk about him was because the pain was still too great. I thought her love for him was so deep that even after all these years, it hurt to remember. I found that romantic in a tragic way. So I stopped asking. I put my curiosity away. I focused on the family I had, my wonderful, strong, loving mother. I decided that having one amazing parent was more than enough. I didn't need a ghost. I had her. I grew up. I went to college to study graphic design. It was hard for my mother to let me go. I saw the fear in her eyes the day I moved into the dorm. She held on to me a little too tightly, for a little too long. Be careful, Maya, she whispered. The world can be complicated. I'll be fine, Mum, I said, laughing. It's just college. She nodded, but the worry never really left her face. I thought she was just being a typical, overprotective mother. Now, I wonder if she was afraid of what I might find out there, away from the safe little world she had built for us. After college, I got a job at a small design firm and moved into my own apartment not too far from her. Our relationship changed, as it does when children become adults. We were more like friends. I would go over for dinner every Sunday. We would talk on the phone several times a week. She was still my best friend. She was the first person I called with any news, good or bad. I started dating a man named Ben. He was kind, steady, and reliable. My mother liked him immediately. I could see the relief in her eyes. She approved. It was as if she were passing the torch, happy that I had found someone solid to walk through life with. When Ben and I decided to get married, she was overjoyed. She threw herself into helping plan the wedding. She insisted on making my wedding dress herself. We spent hours together, looking at patterns, choosing the perfect lace. Those were some of the happiest days of my life, sitting with her in that familiar room, surrounded by beautiful fabric. I felt so connected to her, so loved. I remember looking at her head bent over her work, her glasses perched on the end of her nose, and thinking, this is what pure love looks like. I had no idea that the foundation of that love was about to be shaken. The secret was still sleeping, but it was stirring, and soon it would wake up. The first ripple came about 3 months before the wedding. Ben and I were over at my mother's apartment for Sunday dinner. We were talking about the guest list. It was a small list, mostly friends and a few colleagues. My mother's side of the list was very short, just her sister, my Aunt Carol, and a couple of old friends from her sewing circle. What about your side, Maya? Ben asked. Any other family we're forgetting? Second cousins? Anyone from your dad's side? It was an innocent question. He was just being thorough. But I saw my mother's hand, which was holding a serving spoon, freeze for just a second. It was so quick I almost missed it, but I didn't. No, I said, answering for her. It was just Mom and me, you know that. Right, of course, Ben said, smiling. Just checking. My mother resumed serving the food, but her movements were a little stiffer than before. The conversation moved on, but I kept thinking about that tiny pause. As I sit here and share these stories, I often wonder about the wonderful faces on the other side of this conversation. It would truly mean so much to me if you felt comfortable sharing just a little bit about yourself in the comments below. Perhaps just your first name and the city or country where you're listening from, whatever feels right for you. Every comment I read helps me picture our growing family of listeners, gathered together from all different corners of the world, and it reminds me that these stories are connecting us across the miles. There's no pressure at all, but if you'd like to say hello, I would be truly honored to welcome you properly. That flicker of something in her eyes. It was fear, I was sure of it. But why would a simple question about family cause fear? Later, when Ben was in the other room taking a phone call, I asked her about it. Are you okay, Mum? You seemed a little upset when Ben asked about Dad's family. She forced a bright smile. Upset? Don't be silly, Maya. It was just a surprise, that's all. It's been so long since anyone mentioned him. She turned away from me and started washing the dishes with a fierce concentration. It still makes me sad, that's all. It was a reasonable explanation, but for the first time in my life, it didn't feel completely true. There was a new, faint doubt in my mind, a little seed of suspicion that had been planted. A few weeks later, I was helping her clean out her closet. We were looking for an old jewelry box she thought I might like to have. As we were pulling things out, a small, worn-looking book fell from the top shelf and landed at my feet. It was a photo album, a very old one. I had never seen it before. "What's this?" I asked, picking it up. My mother's face went pale. She moved faster than I had ever seen her move. She snatched the album from my hands. "That's nothing," she said, her voice sharp. "Just old pictures from before." She clutched it to her chest like it was a treasure or a bomb. "From before what?" I asked, confused by her reaction. "Before me? Can I see?" "No," she said, and her tone was final. It was the voice she used when I was a child, and she meant business. "There's nothing in here you need to see, Maya, just old sadness." She turned and hurried out of the room, taking the album with her. I stood there in the half-empty closet, stunned. My heart was beating fast. Why would she react like that? What was in that album that she didn't want me to see? Pictures of my father. Why would that be old sadness? Shouldn't she want to share his memory with me? The seed of doubt began to sprout. I started to notice other things, the way she would quickly change the subject if a TV show mentioned adoption, the way she never ever talked about her pregnancy with me. When other mothers would tell stories about when their children were born, my mother would tell stories about when I was a toddler. She always skipped the very beginning. I tried to talk to Ben about it. "Do you think it's weird that my mom has no pictures of my dad, and that she got so upset about that photo album?" He shrugged, trying to be practical. "People grieve in different ways, Maya. Maybe it's just too painful for her. Maybe seeing his picture makes her miss him too much." "Maybe," I said. But I wasn't convinced. This felt different. This felt like hiding, not grieving. The tension inside me grew. I became quieter around my mother. I found myself studying her face, looking for clues. I started asking subtle questions, circling the past like a detective. "Mom, what hospital was I born in?" I asked one day. She looked flustered. "Oh, goodness, that was so long ago. The General Hospital, I think. Yes, the old one that closed down." "What was your doctor's name?" "Dr. Evans?" "No, Dr. Miller." My memory is terrible, Maya. Why all these questions all of a sudden? I'm just curious, I said. I'm about to start my own family with Ben. It makes me think about how I started mine. She patted my hand. The past is the past, my love. You should focus on the future, on your wonderful future with Ben. But I couldn't. The past was suddenly a locked door, and I was desperate to find the key. I started having dreams, dreams of a man whose face I couldn't see, dreams of my mother crying. I woke up feeling anxious and unsettled. One afternoon, driven by a compulsion I didn't fully understand, I went online. I typed my father's name into a search engine, the name she had given me, Robert Miller, the man who died in a car accident. I found nothing, no death records that matched, no news articles about a fatal crash. It was as if he had never existed. My hands were cold as I typed. This was more than a missing picture, this was a missing person, a man who had left no trace in the world at all. The sprout of doubt was now a full-grown plant, twisting inside me. I didn't confront her, I was too scared. What if Ben was right? What if I was digging up old pain for no reason? What if I was hurting her with my suspicion? I loved her so much, the thought of causing her pain was unbearable. So I tried to put it out of my mind. I threw myself into wedding planning. I focused on choosing flowers and cakes and music. I smiled and laughed and acted like everything was normal, but everything felt different. There was a space between my mother and me now, a space filled with unasked questions and a secret I could feel but not see. She sensed it too, I could tell. She became more attentive, more loving. She would call me more often. She would bring me little gifts. It was as if she were trying to reinforce the walls of our world, to remind me of how much we loved each other. She was trying to protect me and our relationship from the truth she knew was lurking just beneath the surface. She was trying to hold back the tide, but the tide was coming in, and all it would take was one more message to wash everything away. The message arrived on a Thursday evening. I was at home, tired after a long day at work, looking over seating charts for the wedding. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a social media site I barely used, a friend request. I almost ignored it, but the name made me stop. The name was Daniel Reeves. I didn't know anyone named Daniel Reeves. I clicked on the profile. The picture was of a man in his late 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. There was something familiar about him, but I couldn't place it. His profile was mostly private. We had no mutual friends. I was about to delete the request, assuming it was a mistake or a spam account, when I saw the short message attached to it. Hello, Maya. My name is Daniel. I believe I may be your father. I know this must come as a shock. If you are willing, I would very much like to talk to you. I read the words, then I read them again. And again. The room seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my throat. Your father. The words seemed to burn on the screen. This is a joke, I thought. A cruel, horrible joke. My father was Robert Miller. He was dead. He had been dead for 28 years. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I typed a reply. I think you have the wrong person. My father died before I was born. The response came almost instantly. It was as if he had been waiting, his finger poised over the keyboard. His name wasn't Robert Miller. His name was Joseph Reeves. He was my brother, and he didn't die in a car accident. Your mother's name is Grace, isn't it? She was a waitress at the Sunnyside Diner. She and my brother were in love. I felt like I was going to be sick. Joseph Reeves, the Sunnyside Diner. Details. Specific details. This wasn't a random spammer. This man knew things. You're lying, I typed, my vision blurring with tears. I have pictures, his message came back. I can show you, please, Maya. I have been looking for you for a very long time. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the walls of my apartment were closing in on me. All the little doubts, the strange reactions from my mother, the missing photos, the hidden album, it all crashed down on me at once. It was true. Somehow I knew in my bones that it was true. My entire life was a lie. The story I had built my identity on was a fiction. The father I had mourned was a ghost she had invented. The man I was named after, the man whose smile I supposedly shared, had never existed. A hot, sharp anger rose in me, so powerful it scared me. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and my phone and I drove to my mother's apartment. I didn't call first. I didn't text. I just drove, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I found her in the living room, sitting in her armchair, knitting. The scene was so normal, so peaceful. It felt like a mockery of the chaos raging inside me. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. Maya, what a lovely surprise. Then she saw my face. The smile faded. What's wrong? What happened? I held up my phone, the screen still showing the messages from Daniel Reeves. My hand was trembling. Who is Joseph Reeves? My voice was low and shaking. The color drained from her face completely. The knitting needle slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. She looked like I had just physically struck her. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. The silence in the room was heavy and terrible. Maya, she whispered, her voice breaking. Who is he? I demanded, my voice rising. And who is Robert Miller? Tell me the truth. For once in your life, tell me the truth. She began to cry. Silent tears streamed down her face. She looked small and frail in her big armchair, like a little girl who had been caught in a terrible mistake. I was going to tell you, she sobbed. I was waiting for the right time. The right time? I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. When would that have been, Mom? After I got married? After I had children of my own? Never? Were you just going to take this to your grave? I did it to protect you, she cried, her hands pleading with me. You have to believe me. It was to keep you safe. Safe from what? I shouted. Safe from the truth. Safe from having a father. What were you protecting me from? She took a ragged breath, her whole body shaking. From him, from Joseph. So he's real? The confirmation was another blow. He's alive? No, she said, her voice a broken whisper. No, he's not alive. He took his own life, Maya. A month before you were born. The world stopped. The anger drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow shock. He took his own life. The words echoed in the silent room. I sank onto the sofa, my legs unable to hold me anymore. I felt numb. What? I managed to say. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. The secret was out. There was no hiding it now. His name was Joseph, she began, her voice barely audible. He was beautiful and wild and troubled. We were so young. I loved him more than anything. When I told him I was pregnant, he was so happy. We were going to get married. We were going to be a family. She paused, gathering the strength to continue. But he had a darkness in him, a depression he couldn't shake. He tried to hide it from me, but I saw it. His family. They were difficult. They didn't approve of me. I was just a waitress from the wrong side of town. They put so much pressure on him. One night, it all became too much. He left a note. He said he was sorry. He said he couldn't be the father I needed him to be. He said we would be better off without him. I listened, unable to speak, unable to move. The story was unfolding, and it was nothing like the one I had known. I was devastated, she continued, and I was terrified. I was alone and pregnant. His family blamed me. They said I drove him to it. They said they would fight me for custody of the baby. They had money and lawyers. I had nothing. I was so scared they would take you away from me. She looked at me, her eyes begging for understanding. So I ran. I changed my name. I made up a story about a man named Robert Miller who died in a car accident. It was clean. It was simple. There was no shame in it. No messy, painful truth about mental illness and suicide. I wanted you to have a clean story, a happy story. I wanted to protect you from that pain, from that stigma. I wanted to give you a life that wasn't shadowed by his tragedy. She had been crying this whole time. Everything I did for you, Maya. Every lie, every secret. It was all to build a safe world for you. Can't you see that? I looked at her. The woman I had loved and trusted my whole life. The woman who had been my everything. And all I could see was a stranger. A stranger who had built my life on a foundation of lies. You lied to me, I said, my voice flat and empty. My whole life, you lied to me about who I am. You let me mourn a ghost. You let me feel a piece of me was missing, and you knew why it was missing all along. I thought it was for the best, she pleaded. You didn't trust me, I said, standing up. The numbness was being pushed aside by a fresh wave of pain. You didn't trust me enough to handle the truth. You didn't trust me to love you, no, matter what. You built this prison of lies and called it protection. I walked towards the door. I couldn't be in that room with her anymore. I couldn't look at her. Maya, please, she cried out, getting to her feet. Don't go, please, let me explain. I stopped at the door and turned to look at her one last time. The sight of her, broken and desperate, is etched into my memory forever. You had 28 years to explain, Mum, I said quietly. You just never did. I walked out, closing the door behind me. I didn't slam it, I just closed it. And that quiet click felt louder than any scream. It was the sound of my old life ending. The days that followed were a blur of grief. It was a different kind of grief than I had ever known. I wasn't mourning a death. I was mourning a life. The life I thought I had. The mother I thought I knew. It felt like she had died, and a stranger had taken her place. I didn't go to work. I barely got out of bed. Ben tried his best to comfort me, but he didn't know what to say. How could he? The story was so unbelievable. She thought she was protecting you, he would say, echoing her words. But he didn't understand. The protection felt like a violation. I ignored my mother's calls, dozens of them. She sent text messages, long, pleading ones. Please, Maya, talk to me. I love you more than anything. I'm so sorry. I read them all, but I didn't reply. I was too angry, too hurt. The wound was too fresh. After a week of silence, I finally responded to Daniel Reeves. I agreed to meet him. I had to. I needed to find a piece of my real story, something that was true. We met at a quiet coffee shop. I was terrified. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table, nervously turning a cup in his hands. When he saw me, he stood up. He had the same kind eyes as in his profile picture. And now I could see what was familiar about him. I could see it in the shape of his face, in the way he held himself. I could see a glimpse of myself. Maya, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for coming. We sat down. For a long time, we just looked at each other. Then he slid a small, worn photograph across the table. It was of a young man with dark, curly hair and a bright, lopsided smile. He was handsome. He looked happy. "This is Joseph," Daniel said. "Your father." I picked up the photo. My hands were shaking. I was looking at my father's face for the very first time. I saw my own eyes looking back at me, my own smile. The resemblance was undeniable. A sob caught in my throat. "He was a good man," Daniel said softly. "He was my little brother. He was funny and creative. He could make anyone laugh, but he struggled. He had a darkness that none of us knew how to help. My parents, they were hard on him. They had high expectations. When he met your mother, he was the happiest I had ever seen him. He talked about her all the time. He was so excited about the baby. He told me the same story my mother had told, but from a different angle. The pressure from the family, the deep depression, the terrible final decision. After he died," Daniel continued, "my parents were lost in their own grief. They blamed your mother. It was wrong, but they weren't thinking clearly. They talked about wanting custody. They said it was their last link to Joseph. I think your mother overheard them. She disappeared. We tried to find her for years. We hired private investigators, but she had covered her tracks well. It was only recently, with these online genealogy sites, that I found a trace of you." He looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "I'm not here to disrupt your life, Maya. I just, I wanted you to know that you have a family, that you were loved, that your father loved you, even if he never got to meet you. He talked about you. He had a name picked out. He was going to call you Maya because he said it meant illusion and dream, and he thought you were the most beautiful dream he'd ever had." I broke down then. I cried for the father I never knew. I cried for the young man in the picture who was in so much pain. I cried for my mother who was so scared and alone. I cried for the lost years, for the family I could have had. Daniel reached across the table and held my hand. He didn't say anything. He just let me cry. Meeting him didn't fix everything, but it gave me a piece of my puzzle. It gave me a truth, however painful, to hold on to. Joseph Reeves was real. He was my father, and he had loved me. I started talking to Daniel regularly. He told me stories about his childhood, about Joseph. He sent me more pictures. I learned that I had my father's love for art, his sense of humor. I had cousins I never knew about. It was overwhelming, but it was also healing. It was the truth. Meanwhile, the silence with my mother continued. It was a heavy blanket over my life. Ben kept encouraging me to talk to her. "She's your mother, Maya. She made a terrible mistake, but she's still your mother. You only get one." I knew he was right, but the hurt was a wall I couldn't climb. The turning point came one rainy afternoon. I was at my apartment looking at the picture of Joseph. I thought about the secret my mother had carried. She hadn't just carried it for herself. She had carried the weight of his death, the fear of his family, the shame of that time, all by herself, for 28 years. She had borne it alone so that I wouldn't have to. I thought about her life, the long nights working as a seamstress, the loneliness, the constant fear of being found out. She had sacrificed everything, her past, her identity, her chance at a new relationship, to create a safe world for me. She had given me a happy childhood. She had been the most loving, devoted mother anyone could ask for. Her method was wrong, her lie was profound, but her motivation, Her motivation was love, a twisted, fearful, desperate love, but love nonetheless. She hadn't tried to destroy us. She had tried to save us. In her mind, the truth was a monster that would have devoured our happiness. So she locked the monster away. She just didn't realize that monsters grow in the dark, and when they finally get out, they are bigger and scarier than ever. I picked up my phone. My heart was pounding. I typed a message to her. It was short. "Can we talk?" Her reply was instant. "Yes, please, anywhere, anytime." I drove to her apartment. The rain was still falling, tapping gently on the roof of the car. I felt calm for the first time in weeks. She opened the door before I could even knock. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was holding a tissue, twisting it in her hands. "Maya?" she breathed, as if she couldn't believe I was there. I stepped inside. The apartment was the same, but it felt different. The air was thick with sorrow and regret. We sat in the living room, in the same places we had been during our explosion. I spoke first. "I met my Uncle Daniel." She flinched but nodded. Is he a good man?" "Yes," I said. "He is. He told me about Joseph. He showed me a picture." Fresh tears filled her eyes. "He was so handsome, wasn't he?" "He was," I whispered. There was a long silence. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I am so sorry, Maya. I am so sorry I lied to you. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I see that now. I thought I was building a wall to keep the pain out, but all I did was build a wall between you and me. I would give anything to take it back." I looked at her, really taking in her appearance. I saw the young, terrified girl she had been. I saw the strong, weary woman she had become. I saw my mother. "I know you were trying to protect me," I said, my own voice cracking. "I understand why you did it, but Mom, you have to understand. It hurt so much. It felt like you didn't trust me. It felt like our whole life was a lie." "It wasn't a lie," she cried. "My love for you was never a lie. That was the only real thing in all of it. My love for you." And I knew, in that moment, that she was right. The love was real. It had always been real. It was the foundation, even if the stories built upon it were false. "I need you to promise me something," I said. "Anything." "No more secrets," I said. "Ever. From now on, we only have the truth, no matter how hard it is." She nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her face. "I promise. No more secrets. Only the truth." I got up and walked over to her. I knelt in front of her chair and took her hands in mine. They were the hands that had held me, fed me, sewn my clothes, and brushed my hair. They were the hands that had built my world. "I'm still so angry," I said honestly, "and I'm still so hurt. It's going to take time." "I know," she whispered. "I will wait, for as long as it takes." "But I love you," I said. And it was the truth. A complicated, wounded, but enduring truth. "I still love you." She pulled me into her arms, and we cried together. We cried for the past that was lost, and for the future that was still uncertain. We cried for the pain we had caused each other. We were broken, but we were together. And that was a start. That was a year ago. The road to healing has been long, and we are still walking it. The cracks that the secret made in our relationship are still visible. Some days they feel very deep. I still have moments of anger, of sadness for the father I never knew and the story I lost. My mother still has moments of guilt, of regret so heavy it almost crushes her. But we are trying. We go to therapy together. We talk about the hard things. We talk about Joseph. We look at the pictures Daniel gave me. We are slowly, carefully, weaving the true story of our family into the fabric of our lives. It's a sadder story, a more complicated story, but it is ours. It is real. My relationship with Daniel is growing. He is a kind, gentle presence in my life. He came to my wedding. It was awkward and emotional, but it was important. He is a link to my father, a living memory. My mother was brave enough to be in the same room with him. They didn't speak much, but they acknowledged each other with a sad, understanding nod. It was a beginning. My wedding day was different from what I had imagined. It was layered with a new complexity. When my mother and I had our dance, the song was not the one we had originally chosen. We picked a new one, a song about forgiveness. As we danced, I held her tight. I could feel the weight of all our years, the good and the bad. I could feel her love, and my love, and all the pain in between. It was not a perfect moment, it was a real moment, and that was enough. But her secret destroyed us. That is the truth, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is also this: she tried to protect me out of love, and that love is also what is rebuilding us. The secret was a bomb that shattered our world, but in the rubble we found the raw materials of our true selves. We found honesty. We found the courage to face painful things together. We are building a new relationship, not on a foundation of fairy tales, but on the solid, unshakable ground of truth. I still have the picture of my father, Joseph, on my dresser. I look at it every day. I don't see a tragic figure. I see a young man who loved my mother, who was excited to meet me, who was in too much pain to stay. I have forgiven him, and I am learning, day by day, to forgive my mother fully. The lesson I learned from all of this is that love cannot be built on a lie, even a lie told with the best intentions. Love needs truth to breathe. Secrets are like weeds. They might not seem like much at first, but left, alone, they will eventually choke out everything beautiful. Protecting someone you love doesn't mean hiding the world from them. It means holding their hand while they face it. It means trusting them enough to be honest, even when the truth is hard. It means being brave together. My mother was brave for 28 years, carrying her secret alone. Now we are learning to be courageous together. Our story is no longer a simple, happy one. It is a story of loss, fear, and a terrible mistake. But it is also a story of a love so strong it survived all of that. It is a story of forgiveness. And that, I have come to realize, is the most beautiful story of all.
If this story touched your heart in some way, my dear listener, I have a small request. Leaving a little like on this video lets me know you are here and that these stories are finding a home with you. And if you'd like to walk with me through more of these family journeys, please consider subscribing to Auntie Genevieve's stories. It truly helps this quiet corner of storytelling grow, and it ensures you won't miss our next moment together. Thank you for listening.